Country records 619 deaths in past 24 hours as some sectors prepare return to work. The number of new coronavirus infections in Spain have fallen to a record low since the outbreak began, as Europe's worst-hit country braced for the reopening of some sectors of its economy this week. Deaths increased slightly to 619 in the past 24 hours and were likely to exceed 17,000 on Sunday, but Spanish Health Ministry figures showed new cases had grown by 2.6% over the same period, the lowest rate since the pandemic took off in the country a month ago, and caseloads started increasing by 1/5 every day. Evidence that a strict lockdown, in place since the 14th of March, was working came as some factory and construction workers prepared to return to work on Monday, a call that has drawn criticism in some quarters. In a letter to the Prime Minister, Pedro Sánchez, Catalonia's regional president, asked to see the medical and epidemiological advice on which the decision was taken. Quim Torra also suggested that the move would provoke a rise in infections and a situation of collapse for Catalonia's health system. Speaking after a video conference with the leaders of Spain's autonomous regions on Sunday afternoon, Sánchez said the country remained firmly in lockdown despite the easing of restrictions on non-essential workers. Those returning to work were being advised to maintain social distancing, and face masks will be handed out in metro and rail stations. "I want to be very clear," he said. "We are not entering a phase of de-escalation. The state of emergency is still in force, and so is the lockdown. The only thing that has come to an end is the 2-week extreme economic hibernation period." Coronavirus, the week explained. Sign up for our email newsletter. Read more. The Prime Minister said anyone who was ill or pregnant, or showing even the mildest symptoms, should stay at home. General confinement will remain the rule for the next 2 weeks, and the only people allowed out will be those going to authorized jobs or making authorized purchases, he said. Sánchez said there could be a progressive and very cautious relaxation of the lockdown in 2 weeks' time at the earliest, but only if current trends continued. The World Health Organization has said there could be a deadly resurgence of the coronavirus if countermeasures are lifted too soon, while one of the Spanish government's own experts has said he thought it would have been sensible to keep non-essential workers at home for longer. Sánchez has warned the lockdown is likely to be extended beyond the 26th of April. Under the rules of confinement, people are allowed to leave their homes only to go to work or to buy food or medicine. He also called for unity in the face of what he termed an unprecedented total war, and urged a de-escalation of political tensions. "We are dealing with a completely new situation. I do not have, nor will I have, any enemy but this virus." Optimism over Spain's slowing infection rates was tempered by continuing speculation the actual number of COVID-19 deaths in the country may be much higher than official figures. Recently released data from judicial authorities in Madrid, for example, suggests that 6,600 more people than usual died in the last 2 weeks of March, compared with the official tally of 3,500 COVID-19 deaths in the region. Infection rates continued to decelerate elsewhere in Europe, including the Netherlands, where coronavirus cases topped 25,000 on Sunday with more than 2,700 deaths. The European Commission chief, Ursula von der Leyen, told the German Daily Bild that elderly people on the continent may need to remain isolated until at least the end of the year to protect them from the virus, even if freedom of movement is relaxed for others. "Without a vaccine, we have to limit as much as possible contact with the elderly," she said. "I know it's difficult and that isolation is a burden, but it is a question of life or death. We have to remain disciplined and patient. Children and young people will enjoy more freedom of movement earlier than elderly people and those with pre-existing medical conditions," she said. In an Easter Sunday Mass performed to a handful of people in St. Peter's Basilica and live-streamed around the world, Pope Francis said he hoped rivalries from before the Second World War do not regain force as a result of the pandemic. He said the crisis presented the European Union with an epical challenge, on which will depend not only its future but that of the whole world. Nearly 110,000 people have died from coronavirus, according to the Johns Hopkins University tracker, with more than 1.78 million people diagnosed. Tight restrictions on movement came into force on Sunday in Jerusalem, where predominantly ultra-Orthodox Jewish areas have been hit disproportionately by the virus, in part because influential rabbis were slow to shut synagogues and religious seminaries.